God hates immorality. And the solution for immorality, according to the scriptures, is marriage. In other words, the reason we marry is so that we do not become immoral. You have to have sex is only with the person you have made a long-term commitment with. The Bible really talks about this issue of immorality. Matthew 5:32 says, "But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her the victim of adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." Then verse 9, Matthew 15:19, "For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander." God is including immorality as one of the bad sins. Matthew 19 verse 9, "I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for immorality and marries another woman, he's actually committing adultery." Matthew 7, "For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts comes." Again, the example given, sexual immorality. And Acts 15:20, "Instead we should write to them, telling them to abstain from food polluted by idols." And what else? From sexual immorality. The Gentiles were to know that they don't have to follow Jewish customs, but they must avoid among their cultural customs any custom that encourages sexual immorality. Acts 15:29 repeats the same. "You are to abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood, from the meat of strangled animals, and, again, from sexual immorality. You do well to avoid these things." Then Acts chapter 21, verse 25. "As for the Gentile believers, we have written to them our decision that they should abstain from a list of things ending with from sexual immorality." Then Romans 13, verse 13 says, "Let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in," the same word, "sexual immorality, and especially not in deception and jealousy." So to behave decently is to not be involved in sexual immorality. 1 Corinthians 5:1, dealing with a case of incest here, it is accurately reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and a kind that even pagans do not tolerate. A man is sleeping with his father's wife. This is people in the church, and Paul is totally unhappy with them. Sexual immorality that went even to the level of incest. Then the same book, 1 Corinthians 6, verse 12, "I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything." So do not allow sexual immorality is being mastered by your body, being mastered by your lust, behaving like an animal that when it's on heat, it will pick the first the first oxen will be that is available. Saying no. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 is saying, yes, you may be free to do it, but not beneficial. I have a right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by this. So do not allow the sex drive to master you. 1 Corinthians 6:13, "You say food for the stomach and stomach for the food, but God will destroy them both. The body, however, is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body." So sexual immorality is a sign that you don't belong to God. Because if you belong to God, your body would also belong to God. 1 Corinthians 6:18, "Flee from sexual immorality." In other words, don't walk away. Give what I call the Joseph kick, Joseph, son of Jacob. when the Potiphar's wife wanted to seduce him, he didn't start negotiating with a woman who wants to trick you. You take off, have nothing to do with it. The word of God is saying, flee. Don't negotiate with a woman who has cornered you. Don't negotiate with a man who is on heat. Run. You can apologize later for your misbehavior of leaving him without warning. 1 Corinthians 7:2. But since sexual immorality is occurring, can you imagine occurring in the church? Each man should have sexual relation with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. Since there is immorality in the church, what's the solution? Stick with your wife. Stick with your husband. That's what 1 Corinthians 7 verse 2 is actually saying. This may suggest that part of the problem that's causing sexual immorality is marriages where spouses do not meet each other's sexual needs. 1 Corinthians 10:8, we should not commit sexual immorality as some of them did. And in one day, 23,000 of them died. God is warning sexual immorality. He hates it and would condemn it, and people die out of it. Galatians 5:19, the acts of the flesh are obvious. Among the first acts that you are a fleshly carnal guy is sexual immorality. Of course, there is impurity and debauchery, etc. Ephesians 5:3 says, but among you, there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality, of any kind of impurity or greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Here we are not talking about somebody sleeping with somebody else's wife, but even having a hint, talking language, sexual language, or things that are what we would call loose language that encourage immorality. That's a hint. Oh, I didn't commit adultery. Yes, you didn't. But the language is encouraging moving to that direction. Colossians 3:5, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to you, to your other nature. What does belong to other nature? Among the ones listed is sexual immorality. Because there is impurity, lust, evil desires, greed, which are all basically idol worship, idolatry. Sexual immorality is listed among those that shows you are an idol worshipper. And how are you going to deal with this? Put to death what belongs to your other nature. You must be ruthless with your body in propelling it towards holiness, keeping off from anything that could lead to sexual immorality. 1 Thessalonians 4:3 says, it is God's will that you should be sanctified, that you should avoid sexual immorality. You cannot be a sanctified person when you allow your mind to be involved in sexual immorality. That's why we are not just talking about sleeping with people and you are not married to. Even pornography is all to do with it. You cannot encourage it. Jude 1:4 also talks about the same thing. For certain individuals whose condemnation was written about long ago have secretly slipped in among you, Jude says. They are ungodly people who pervert the grace of our God into a license for immorality and deny Jesus Christ, our only sovereign and Lord. Can you imagine? Here are people who say we are delivered, we are free, we live in the days of grace. So therefore sexual immorality is not a big deal, or be forgiven anyway. Then verse 7 of Jude, in a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to what? What made Sodom and Gomorrah be destroyed? Sexual immorality and perversion. And they were destroyed to serve as an example for those who suffer the punishment of eternal fire. Some people think hell is not, but look at the English. That Sodom and Gomorrah had a one-time fire. But those who are involved in sexual immorality are going to end up with suffer the punishment of eternal fire. What is eternal fire? That's fire that never stops. I know a lot of people, even one of the great theologians said, he finds it difficult to believe in eternal fire, where you burn continuously with pain permanent for life, for eternity. He finds it too cruel. But here it is, that people involved in sexual immorality are actually welcoming the punishment of eternal fire. Just look at Jude verse 7. And the same things are mentioned in the book of Revelation. That the people that are going to end up in trouble are people involved in sexual immorality. Look at Revelation 2:14. Now I have few things against you. These are some among you. There are some among you who hold to the teachings of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin, so that they ate food sacrificed to idols and committed sexual immorality. You know, the prophet found it impossible to put a curse on Israel, because he said you cannot curse that which God has blessed. So, but he finally got through. How? According to Revelation, he had advised the king. These people cannot be cursed. What can you do? Get them to sexual immorality, and they will have trouble with their God. See, Balaam, the prophet, is being told that he taught Balak the king to entice the Israelites to sin, so that they ate food sacrificed to idols and they committed sexual immorality. Can you imagine? You have God's protection, you have God's grace, but the moment you open up yourself to curses, it's when you get involved in sexual immorality. That's the moment you have opened up yourself to curses. And we are told that Balak, that's what he did. He was unable to bring a curse on them, but by enticing the women of the women of Moab, getting the men of Israel to sleep with them, was finally the door that would bring the curse on the protected Israel. So what are we saying? We are saying it needs to be understood very clearly that however tempting immorality can be, it will be important that you learn that it is wrong and God condemns it. The solution to it is to submit to one another as a couple. You know, when verse Ephesians 5:21 says submit to one another. In other words, it's not the wife submitting to the man alone or the man submitting to the wife alone. Both of them submitting to one another. This is what will start making the needs of your spouse very critical, including sexual needs. So you surrender yourself. By submitting, you surrender yourself to the spouse. You serve the spouse. You live a life of sacrifice. You sacrifice yourself. That means you may even involved in sex, not because you have interest in it at all, but for the sake of your spouse. You listen to your spouse's request and obey. You give your spouse priority. That's really what it means to submit to one another. And if you do so, you keep this sexual immorality at bay. You know, one of the things we will need to do, for example, as wives, is to understand, don't dichotomize sex and spirituality. In other words, if you're involved in sex, you are not spiritual. It is possible to be both spiritual and enjoy sex according to scriptures. That's what 1 Corinthians chapter 7 is saying. It is saying that we should enjoy each other's body, and even when we may be fasting, it must be for a short time. we should not keep each other away for a long time. So we must understand that God's view of sex is not negative. You know, in some vernaculars, having sex is doing rude, or being, in my vernacular talks about waganu, you know. It's like you are being rude, you are being wrong, you are doing the wrong thing. No. God doesn't have that. He's the one who made it, and is encouraging you not to keep away from it for long in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. So as you come to it, have the view, because somebody may have grown up with this wrong view about sex, and then he brings it into marriage. So it sounds like each time he has done it, he has sinned. Now, when the other person does not want to get you involved, they may finally be tempted to do it outside the marriage. So please have a biblical view of sex, which is God's view, which holds it in high value. I think the other thing the women might have to understand is that sex is viewed differently by men than women. It sounds like for men, I'm not sure about my facts, but for men it sounds like it's something they want almost continuously and regularly, except when they are not healthy. And it doesn't sound like women have the same frequency demand. So it therefore means if a woman is to only allow it when she needs it, the man will feel molested. Might that allow him to move out of the home? I am not saying it's a good thing for him to, but I'm trying to say, since God has given marriage as a solution for immorality, then women must try to understand where the men are coming from. And that will be important. So you must avoid being sexually inhibited. And if you are, seek counseling. You must deal with it. You cannot call yourself a wife or a husband and you're looking at sex as something that's a duty or something you have to do and persevere, rather than the joyful act it was actually meant to be. You may need some counseling. It will be very, very important that also you are open and communicative on issues. You know, you might read this is what husbands are done, or you might read these wives are done, but why can't you discuss with each other to understand what turns him on, what turns her on? Why can't you discuss in details what would make the act more enjoyable? Why should he go to do it outside and to get people who want to do whatever it is that makes him enjoy it? Why can't you, the two of you, discuss it? So, and that's what will help, creating variety in your bedroom, so that there would be no need of somebody going out of the marital bed. You know, as you plant, investing in studying, understanding, and seeing what are the issues at hand in the bedroom, your investment will yield a result, and it will be something that will certainly be helpful finally. So if you really want to keep your husband in your bedroom, I suggest that you accept your husband as he is. Don't think of the one you read about in a book, or the one you saw on a video or a TV. Your guy is your guy. Accept him as he is. The moment you accept him as he is, you'll be able to enjoy his company. The other thing is, I think it would be good to avoid mind reading. Why can't you openly talk? What do you want? How are you feeling now? Mind reading is not something a gift people have. Angels, I think, may have it. And a lot of this idea of can't you see, isn't it obvious? How come you can't tell? Why can't you tell him? Because he cannot read your mind. Why can't you tell her? Because she cannot read your mind. So what we are saying is discuss issues together. Disclose the issues that make you unhappy or the issues that make you happy. But I think the thing that will really help is understanding that what we were taught in Sunday school about joy, how to get joy, is still true. We were told that joy is having Jesus first, living your life first and foremost to honor to God. Then all for others, and others in this case, you are thinking about your spouse, living your life for the good of others. Then finally, self. That's it. Joy is Jesus first, others second, you last. If you rank that way, what will happen is that you create an atmosphere that makes the spouse happy. In the process, it will also make you happy. You are investing in your own joy, because the moment the other person is happy, you can't also be but happy. And I think that will be something that will help to deal with it. But I seem to be giving the wife a bigger responsibility for a low quality intimacy that may lead to people being tempted out. But sometimes it's the husbands. They love women conditionally. If she wears a certain dress, if he gives him a certain food, that may have been a possibility before you married her. After you marry her, you must love her unconditionally. Again, accept her the way she is. Deal with her from where she is. Learn together with her. Love must be unconditional. And the person needs to sense that they are loved, they are appreciated as they are. They don't have to improve. They are not working to earn brownie points. No. They know here is where I'm accepted the way they are, the way I am. So, once you do that, then you also start studying her. Understand what her needs are. Understanding what you can do to meet them. If you understand her, then it is easier to start meeting her needs. You cherish her. What is to cherish her? Is to want the very best for her. And I think that will be important. But I think, we have discussed for both parties, being faithful is the most important. The worst thing you can do to your marriage is to sleep out of that marriage, is to go to another bed. The Bible is saying the marriage bed must be honorable. What does honorable mean? It cannot be made dirty by the person who sleeps there to sleep in another marriage bed. So, faithfulness means commitment. Even if you suspect that your wife or your husband has slept out, you don't do it. You don't hear somebody is going to hell, then join him going there. No, you stick yourself to faithfulness, so that even if he gets judged, you will not be judged. So, you must find a way of looking at each other, loving each other, being faithful to each other. But that will even be easier when you decide that that person is admirable. I think that may be what the Englishman meant when he said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder means what? If you choose to like something, you will like it. If you choose to admire something, you will. So why don't you choose to admire your husband, to admire your wife. And out of that admiration and desire, you will desire them, and they will be your fulfillment, as the stories we are told in the Song of Solomon. I think that will be important. So what have we been saying? Sexual immorality is condemned by the scriptures, number one. Number two, the sexual immorality includes adultery, it includes fornication. And if fornication refers to when you sleep and you are not married. So it means that if you are single, you must be totally single. And until God gives you a spouse, you must present yourself to that spouse, a virgin. That's what will ensure you have not had, you are not promiscuous, you are sexually pure. That's really what we are learning, that God desires holiness, and in all areas, but in this particular instance, he is talking about sexual morality, ensuring that you don't get involved in sex before the wedding. And after the wedding, you only stick with the person. They may be sick, you wait. Like I've said elsewhere in a book, sex is not oxygen. You will not die if you don't have it. So once you are married and the person is sick, wait. And if they don't ever get better, you become like you are single again. Because until the person gets better, you are not allowed to have sex outside because your wife is sick or because your husband is sick. There isn't an explanation. So the first thing we then therefore emphasize is God hates sexual immorality, and that sexual immorality means one man, one wife, one man. But also, when Jesus was defining this sexual immorality, he said it's not just the action, it is the thought. So when you look at a man and desire you wish he was your husband, you desire him in bed, although you don't ever sleep with him, he may not even tell you ever imagine that. According to Jesus, it's not that you have been tempted to commit adultery. You have actually already committed adultery in the mind. And it will be punished the same way. When in hell, some people will be there because they slept with people who they are not married to. Others will be in hell because they enjoyed the thoughts, although they never actually did the action. This will be people involved in pornography, people involved in imagining sexual act with people they are not married to. So I keep saying, if you can manage sexual purity in the mind, it will never happen in the physical. If you start looking at sexual thinking as evil, that will help you to deal with it in the mind before it can become an action. Many people, the reason they end up in the action is because they don't hate. That was just a thought. If you see it badly and see it the way Jesus looked at it, as something that should never be allowed, as evil, or like Jesus is calling it a sin, that if you think lustfully of a person, you have already committed adultery. If that's the way you deal with it, it will be very difficult to ever be involved in adultery, physical adultery. The one of the mind, temptation will come. But just like you cannot prevent a bird flying over your head, similarly, thoughts will fly into your mind. But the first thought is not the problem. It is allowing yourself to dwell on that thought longer, because that's what will lead to you looking for a way of acting on the thought. But if it's just a thought, deal with it at that point. See it as evil. Stop it. And you end up living a life that is of sexual purity. Again, I repeat, marriage is given for sexual enjoyment. Marriage is given a solution of avoiding sexual immorality. May your marriage, if you're involved in a marriage, truly have enjoyable intimacy. And because it is enjoyable intimacy, there will never be a need for either of the spouse to ever think of being out of their marriage bed. And because of that, you will be one example as a couple of people that have been able to keep God's word and hate sexual immorality just like God does. Thank you.